Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Pathological Lawyer Podcast, episode number 2. Let's continue our discussion about pathological lawyering, which to me is lawyering to the extreme or excessively or compulsively. And it's hard to have a conversation about pathological lawyering without talking about limiting beliefs. I was in the Pacific Northwest teaching a class about what I call the Bermuda Triangle of limiting beliefs. First one that we talked about last time is work is hard, has to feel hard, and it's important, and that's one. The second one is I'm not good enough, which many of us can relate to, and the third we'll talk about in the future. But those three limiting beliefs feed off each other, and while they may be our rocket fuels for success, at some point they hold us back. And at the class when I was talking about this, someone said, well, wait a minute, that doesn't necessarily sound like a limiting belief. You know, in the era of only the paranoid survive, isn't that a good thing? And my answer is it's neither good nor bad in isolation. It really depends on what it means to you. And so when we have this limiting belief that I'm not good enough, that's something that's passed down to us either by our parents or by our teachers or by our coaches or all of them in a way of causing us to do better, to try harder, to show up. And if we're paranoid, we might have a chance of surviving. And at some point in our lives, it may be holding us back. It's not necessarily a limiting belief in isolation. It's neither good nor bad, unless, as applied to you, it's keeping you from where you want to be. And so the question was, how do I know if it's a limiting belief? And the answer is, well, it feels bad. It can be that simple. And so there's nothing wrong with trying harder because you feel like you have to catch up. But if it's hurting you, it's hurting your health, making you unhappy, making you work compulsively to the exclusion of things that you want to do, then it would be a limiting belief and it's something to work on. Now, right now in the limiting belief world, the self-help movement, which I suppose I'm a part of, I'm certainly tapped into it and I follow a lot of people, there's this conversation about whether limiting beliefs are better labeled choices or decisions as a way of underscoring the voluntariness of these things that we believe, that we tell ourselves and that affect how we behave. And I think it's not a problem to call them decisions or choices, but for me, belief is a better term. And the reason it's a better term is because, at least for me and for the people that I work with, a lot of times these limiting beliefs are very deeply buried. And they're in the subconscious mind. It's not the part of the mind that you can access intentionally. It's beliefs that show up in your behavior, in your feelings, in your thoughts, and how you speak without having a conscious thought about it. And so when we say, oh, these are choices or decisions that you're making, I think it's frustrating for someone to say, well, if they're choices or decisions that I'm making, why can't I see them? And the answer is because they're in your subconscious mind and you can't access that directly. So what do? I mean, we could talk about the limiting belief of I'm not good enough for a year and maybe not scratch the surface, but it's something that is so pervasive throughout the legal community. And most professionals that I know outside of the legal community have that same limiting belief because we all had the same parents and we all had the same teachers and we all had the same coaches and they all pushed us to do better. And now it's coming home to roost. And it may be that we have perfectionism, or everything has to be perfect or it doesn't get done. And with that sometimes comes procrastination, because if we can't do it perfectly, we don't do it at all. And sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good in terms of getting things out the door. Sometimes it comes into distractions. You know, I'm not good enough and it's painful for me not to live up to my potential, so why even try? Sometimes it motivates us to try harder. Sometimes it lets us off the hook. Well, of course I had to fail because I was never good enough in the first place. All of these things, these are opposites, right? They can show up in opposite ways, but to the extent that they're keeping us from being happy or from accomplishing what we want, they're limiting beliefs. So how do you deal with these things? Well, you go to therapy if it's a childhood thing, something where, you may not be entirely functional. For me, the easiest way to deal with it, or the most dependable way, is not just to sit on a meditation cushion for 30 years, although that would probably help quite well. But to me, it's to feed your subconscious mind through your conscious mind. And the way you do that, in my opinion, is starting with action, right? Self-introspection and thought management is super helpful, but so is doing something. And for me, the great pyramid of fixing the I'm not good enough limiting belief is to start with good sleep, clean eating, and exercise. And why do I say that? Because those are things that winners do, right? Those are the things that if you do them consistently, and you don't have to do them excessively, you don't have to become a powerlifting champion, but if you sleep well, you eat well, and you exercise, that creates a lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle that is conducive to success. It doesn't mean you'll have success, but it does mean that you'll have the confidence that you're doing what you need to be doing to be successful. And as you feel successful in your conscious mind based on your actions, you feed your subconscious mind. And suddenly we have this push of I'm actually doing things that are successful, crowding out those thoughts of I'm not good enough that are buried there deeply. The other thing I think that is super helpful to do, and you can start it tomorrow, is to plan a day, a work day perhaps, or a 24-hour day, that you would, if you did everything on that list, if it's reasonable and charitable to your time and your interest and your energy, would be considered a win. Many of the professionals I deal with who are coming in talking about burnout have one long-running task list spread across years. And it's uninterrupted, chaotic work. And I've lived under that for many, many years. And what I've realized is that I was never off and I was never successful. And if you break a day down into the things that you need to do to take care of your health, sleep, clean eating, some exercise, even just walking, and then you prioritize whatever else is important to you, family commitments and so forth, and then you prioritize your work day and say, okay, these are the things that I can do in the time that I have to do them. And if I do all of these, I'm going to go home or turn off my computer and call it a win. That's a very effective way, in my experience, to consider yourself good enough. And if you choose not to do that and you live in chaos, then you will often feed into that habit of not feeling good enough. I didn't do enough. I didn't work hard enough. I didn't get enough accomplished, and I'm a loser. So think about that. Just try clean eating, sleeping, some exercise, and then planning a day that feels like a win. And see if that changes the way you feel about yourself. And if you continue to build days upon days of winning, you might not see that or feel that I'm not good enough thought creeping into your conscious mind.